Hi, this is a brief summary of Chapter 3, Applied Behavior Analysis, the White Book. Selecting and defining target behaviors. This chapter speaks about behavior assessments, and there are phases to the behavior assessment: screening and general disposition, defining and generally quantifying problems or desired achievement criteria, pinpointing the target behaviors to be treated, monitoring progress, and following up. The focus of the chapter again is selecting and defining target behavior, which is a specific behavior selected for change. Of course, there are some pre-assessment considerations, so when you are about to do an assessment, you have to have those four areas. Authority, of course, you have to be in a position where you can assess someone, so you have to be hired to do so, and you have the ability to do so. Permission, you have to get consent to do an assessment. Resources, of course, you have to have the tools to do the assessment, so whatever assessment kits you need or forms, you need to have them before you start. And then the skills, you have to have experience and the right training to do the assessment. So the assessment methods used by behavior analysts: interviews. You can interview a person, the client himself, or significant others like parents, caregivers, siblings. Checklists, so behavior checklists and rating skills. Standardized tests such as achievement tests and curriculum-based. Achievement tests don't really tell us much about specific skills, so we prefer a curriculum-based. The achievement tests mainly tell you about the grade level. So for example, if you're testing a child reading ability, they can tell you that they're reading at third grade level or fourth grade level, but they wouldn't tell you maybe the exact skills they're lacking. So the curriculum-based tests do that. Direct observations, so collecting ABC data or using ABC recording and anecdotal observations. The first two, A and B, are indirect assessments. You don't directly look at the behavior or assess it. You ask other people, or you get the rating skills of the behaviors or some information about the behavior, but you don't look at it yourself. So that's why they're indirect. And then the last one is ecological assessment, and it's a very tedious assessment. You collect a lot of information about a person, different environments, work environment, home environment. You also assess or you collect data on history of enforcement, maybe also very specific details about the environment like noise level, where he's seated in the classroom, light, so everything in the environment. So it's a very time consuming, and it's also expensive. Can be expensive. So reactive effects of direct assessment. So when you directly assess a behavior, there's a chance that there will be some effects, and it's called reactivity. So the reactivity effect is basically when a person acts differently or behaves differently because he knows that you're there for him, or he thinks that you might be observing him, so he start behaving differently than normal. So that would impact your data collection. They also talk about assessing the social significance of potential target behaviors. So social significance is very important. In selecting target behaviors, practitioners should consider whose behavior is being assessed and changed and why. So when you're working with a client, you're really looking at everyone's behavior, not just your client, but your people around him. And you cannot decide which one's behavior really should be changed. Is it my client or is it his parents? Because sometimes we are asked to look at a client because of specific behavior, not realizing that there are things in the environment that really need to be changed, and these things could be other people's behaviors. So it's really important to look at what needs to be changed. Also, social significance means that the person's behavior or whatever you're teaching or changing, and the person's behaviors have to be important for his daily functioning and his ability to progress in his social life and be functional in his society. Prioritizing target behavior, so it's important to know what to start with. So when more than one eligible target behavior remains significant, after careful consideration, which behavior should be changed first. And there's a form that I will show you from the chapter, and it's gonna tell you, it's like a matrix, it gonna tell you how to calculate which behavior should be worked on first. Defining target behaviors, this is very important. So without definitions, researchers would be unable to accurately and reliably measure the same response classes within and across studies or compare data. So imagine you're having a research study that you're looking at and you're trying to replicate it, or maybe you have more questions about how they did things, or you want to assess further what they did, but you don't have a definition of a behavior you looked at. It will be impossible for you to actually study it or assess or do like a continuation of what they did, because you don't even know precisely what they did or what they worked on. So definitions of target behaviors are very important. Also, without definitions, ongoing evaluation of the target behavior is not possible. So how can you assess a behavior if there's progress or not if you don't have a definition for it? You have to be very specific for you to be able to check the progress and do an evaluation of the target behavior. And if you have multiple people going in looking at the behavior, are they able to assess the same behavior? So it's very important for you to write a clear and a complete definition. Without definitions, program effectiveness cannot be evaluated. Also, your treatment, is it working or not? So without looking at a precise definition of what you're working on, you won't be able to decide if your treatment helped or not. So definition of target behaviors are crucial in doing applied behavior analysis. There are two types of target behavior definitions. There's a function-based and there's the topography-based definitions. The function-based definitions are all relevant forms of response class and their common effect on the environment. So for example, hand-mouthing would be contact of the fingers, hand, or rest with the mouth, lips, or tongue. Also, topography-based definitions would be identifies instances of the target behavior by the shape or form of the behavior. And topography-based definitions are basically when you're looking at a behavior, shape or form, because it's important. So for example, sports would be one of the things that we may use topography-based definitions for certain behaviors. So playing golf, you might want to look at a position and the movement of the golf club for you to be able to make progress in the sport. So basically, topography is not like function, it's more the shape of the behavior or how you're positioned, but the function base is really how it's impacting the environment, and based on the meaning or the reason behind the behavior rather than the form of the behavior. So writing target behavior definitions requires three main parts or ways. So it has to be objective, meaning referring only to observable characteristics, so you cannot really write very vague terms. And if three people take your definition and go in the environment and try to observe it, they would know exactly what to look at. So it has to be very measurable and observable. Clear, so it has to be readable and unambiguous. So again, you have to be very clear in what you mean by the terms you use. So you cannot really use a word like aggression. The person won't be able to go in the environment and record or collect data on a specific behavior, because aggression can include so many behaviors. So now you don't have a definition of the behavior you're targeting. So you have to be clear and unambiguous. Basically, if somebody reads it, they shouldn't have questions about it. Third one is complete. So what to be included and excluded in the response. So you really have to write what are we looking at and what we're not looking at. So if someone goes in the classroom and have the definition something like he will hit his peer, the peer like who sits next to him. You may be looking at two behaviors: punching in the face and kicking in the stomach, for example. And if a person goes in and he doesn't have specifically what he's taking data on or what is he treating, he wouldn't know which one to work on if you're telling him just the word hitting. So you really have to be specific, saying we will include the kicking, but we're not working on the punching right now. Okay, so it has to include everything, and also give examples of what's not included. Social validity. So how much does the target behavior need to change before it makes a meaningful difference in the person's life? So how much you're gonna continue to change the target behavior until you decide to stop, because it's now working and it's meaningful. It's making a meaningful difference. So of course it depends on the behavior and the person you're working with, but one of the ways to assess that is to assess the performance of people judged to be highly competent. So you need to see, okay, so this behavior when taught or when used, it needs to be used in a certain way or to a certain degree to be effective. So that's what you look at, how other people do it to be successful at it. And this is the way you compare what you're doing with your client to the people who are competent in the skill. Also experimentally manipulate different levels of performance to determine empirically which produces optimal results. So also you need to work with your client to see what is the best way he can perform this skill or behavior to be meaningful. So this is another way to do it, and to kind of determine empirically, of course, which produces optimal results by manipulating, the levels that you can use or you can reach. After that, we are just gonna go over some forms that were included in the chapter. So this one is the form for parents or significant others, and it basically can be used as a starter of possible target behavior. So maybe in an interview you can provide this form for parents or caregivers and ask them to see or write 5 good things that this client of yours is able to do now, and 5 things that they should be doing, or 5 things that should be reduced. This is a very nice way for them to kind of like write a clear list of what they want or what they're targeting, and there are some instructions here on how to do it. So this is a nice tool for interviews. Then they have an ABC recording form, and it's very specific, just kind of a sample of how to use ABC charts. And as you could see, time is very important. It goes by the minute. Antecedent behavior and consequence, what happens before the behavior and after, and what is the behavior. Very specific. Here the consequence, they don't just write, oh, like a female peer answered him. They said exactly what she says. So a female peer says, would you please be quiet? It tells you exactly what's happening in the environment over and over again. Like if it's something that lasts for a minute or more, but the behavior keep changing, or things are happening, they continue to tell you what happened before the behavior. Of course, the date, the start time, the end time, and the setting, math period. And the behavior goes very precisely, and every time it changes they record it. So it says walks around the room and looks at other students, sits down, makes funny noises with mouth, says to the peer, what me, stops making noises. So it's very, very specific. It has everything that happens in the environment. Then this is a worksheet for evaluating the social significance of potential target behaviors. So you're gonna write the behavior of interest here, and you're gonna try to figure out if the if this behavior is socially significant. So these are very important questions you should ask. So is this behavior likely to produce likely to produce reinforcement in the client's natural environment after intervention ends? So, you're teaching a new skill. Is this skill going to continue after you finish working with the client? Very important, because what's the point of teaching a new skill or working on a behavior if it's going to stop once you stop the intervention? Is this behavior a necessary prerequisite for a more complex and functional skill? Will this behavior increase the client's access to environments in which other important behaviors can be acquired and used? Will changing this behavior predispose others to interact with the client in a more appropriate and supportive manner? Is this behavior a pivotal behavior or behavioral cusp? So let's talk about behavioral cusp and pivotal behavior. So behavioral cusp is basically when you teach a behavior, and with this behavior, the person is able to access or get to new or more reinforcements and environments. So for example, walking. If you were teaching a child how to walk, this child will have access to or crawl to more toys, to different rooms in the home, to his parents. If you go to the park, he'll have access, if he's walking, to the swing or the slide, to other kids to play with. So just the behavior itself, walking, will take him to different reinforcements and so forth. Pivotal behavior is a little different. So if you're teaching the behavior, this behavior will generalize to other behaviors. So for example, if you're teaching a child to initiate conversation with his peer, he may go in the classroom and be the first person to raise his hand to answer a question. Also, if somebody needs help, he may be the first one to volunteer to provide help. So you find this one behavior not changes, but it more like generalizes to other behaviors. That's a pivotal behavior. So you have to ask, the behavior you're teaching will lead this child or this client to pivotal behavior or behavioral cusp. Is this an age-appropriate behavior? This is a very important question. You're not going to teach a client a behavior that's not age-appropriate. It may be very difficult for him, and what's the point? That's not so. It's not going to help him in any way. So it's really important for you to consider age appropriateness. If this behavior is to be reduced or eliminated from the client's repertoire, has an adaptive and functional behavior been selected to replace it? This is also very important. If you are going to reduce a behavior, have you decided or determined what is the best replacement behavior to use or to teach this client for him to be able to reduce the other behavior that you need to target? Does this behavior present the actual problem, goal, or is it only indirectly related? So this is also important. If your goal is for somebody to lose weight, what is the behaviors you're going to work on? Losing weight is not a behavior, it's a consequence or a result. So what is the behavior you're going to focus on for this person to lose weight? That's a question, okay? So you have to really be careful if you're targeting a behavior or something else. Or even if you're targeting a behavior that's kind of indirectly related to the real problem or the real question behavior. Is this just talk, or is it the real behavior of interest? So if you have somebody who tells you, I promise I'm going to change this, I'm going to stop doing whatever. Now, talking about the behavior doesn't mean that it is the behavior. You're not targeting the speaking about the behavior, you should really target the behavior itself. So as much as this person can keep telling you that he will reduce it, that does not mean that you're working on the right behavior. So you really have to focus on the right behavior regardless of what's being said. If the goal itself is not a specific behavior, losing 20 pounds, will this behavior help achieve it? So that's the same thing as I mentioned before. If the goal is to lose weight, are you looking at the right behavior to produce the weight loss? Okay, so this is a really nice form, can be used when working on different behaviors. Alright, so prioritizing potential target behaviors. So here they give you 4 behaviors to work on. Of course, you can have more, but it's nice because you're going to answer all these questions about each behavior. You're going to have here total points for each one, and the highest one means that it's the one that really should be targeted first, okay? Because the whole point of the prioritizing is that you want to know which one should I start with. So danger, does this behavior pose danger? Of course, dangerous behaviors are very important to work on. So that's a question about dangerous behavior. How many opportunities will the person have to use this new skill in the natural environment, or how often does a problem behavior occur? So how important is this? Is this really being used so much that it really needs to be changed? How long-standing is a problem or skill deficit? Will changing the behavior produce a higher rate of reinforcement for the person? What is the relative importance of this target behavior to future skill development and independent functioning? Will changing the behavior reduce negative or unwanted attention from others? Will changing this behavior produce reinforcement for significant others? So this is also not just the individual we're working with, but the people around him. How likely is success in changing this behavior? This is a very important question. Should we start with a behavior that's not likely to succeed right away, that needs a long time, and leave behind the ones that are more likely to succeed, or you have some data that shows that it could be changed in less time than the others? So which one you should start with? Because again, if there's a chance this behavior will take a very long time to succeed, or different interventions to try, why you should start with it. Again, of course, it depends on how severe the problem is or the behavior is, but that's a good question to ask. How much will it cost to change this behavior? Also, your resources. Do you have the resources to change the behavior? And if you don't, what can you do, and how much is it cost? It's going to cost you for you to change it. So it's an important question. If you're not ready to work on a behavior, should you start with this behavior? So that was chapter 3. Thank you so much for listening. Again, this is a brief summary of my own understanding to the chapter.